Good afternoon, everyone, and warm welcome. If I just get myself on screen, fantastic. And a warm welcome to our third episode of QuickBooks Labs. Funnily enough, it's been another 2 weeks that have gone since the last one. QuickBooks Labs is a bi-weekly vlogcast, the place to come and listen to all things QuickBooks and other things about accountancy news. My name is Aaron Patrick. I'm a chartered accountant, certified UK trainer, and also owner of an accounting firm called BossFix. And joining me is Ash. How you doing, Ash?
Great, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I'm Ash, also a QuickBooks trainer, experienced bookkeeper / accountant, and happen to be the director of fast-scale applications that deals with Net Tracker, making fixed assets nice and easy.
Perfect. So fantastic. How does this all work, I hear you ask? Well, first and foremost, we are live. It is 4 o'clock on a Tuesday, which is our normal time that we go live to the nation each and every day. If you are live, please feel free to jump in and give us some comments, some questions, because this is what it's all about. It's about your burning questions and making sure that we can answer them as well. Also, if you are listening at a different date, if you do have any questions for the next show, do get in touch with us over our Facebook page, QuickBooks Labs, where you can come along and you can ask questions as you go. So furthermore, we also now have a podcasting service as well. So if there's something that you quite like and you think that it could be quite useful to be listened to on a regular basis, then please feel free to look at subscribing to us over on podcasts. So Ash, what's the agenda for today?
So, Aaron, as usual, we shall have a little bit of news, various sort of QuickBooks-related news. We'll take a look at a couple of features, a little bit of sort of bookkeeping tips within there, and then sort of the last sort of 20 minutes, half an hour or so, we'll have an open Q&A session. So any questions that you have, we can answer them live on air.
Perfect. So that brings us straight into this news section. My first news of today, I mean, I'm keeping to a similar topic here. The last two news sections have all been related to this, but I'm thinking PayPal quite a prevalent issue, and it's something that a lot of our clients are actually struggling with at the moment in terms of making sure it's working. But we actually got an email through from QuickBooks themselves and basically confirming stuff that we kind of already knew, but at least it kind of gives us some insight into what they're thinking, and also if there's any solution that's going to come anytime soon. So it's all to do with PayPal and the integration with multi-currency. If you use PayPal on a regular basis, you may have noticed that it doesn't deal with multi-currency all that well at this moment in time. And in fact, at Bofix, we've had to come up with really crazy ways in which we can actually deal with multi-currency items to go through QuickBooks. Basically, QuickBooks have come out and said that they are aware of the problem. They know that there are some issues with the functionality, but they are looking to improve on it. And it's that looking to improve on it that's the most important bit, really, in my eyes. So at the moment, what they have said is carry on introducing your transactions as you normally would for anything non-multi-currency. But the second you do get a multi-currency transaction, then consider putting that in manually. So if it does come through on the live feed, then I would exclude that transaction and then I would bring that in manually for now. They do say that uploading, downloading CSV files is a good way of doing that. In our opinion, though, when you do that from PayPal, sometimes that can be even more confusing if you've ever looked at the CSV file itself. So if you've got only a few transactions, I would highly recommend just bringing one or two in. Have you had any dealings with that? I know I keep asking you this each time.
I know PayPal can be extremely painful. I just think of something like painful and PayPal actually link together very nicely, especially when multi-currency is involved, because you sometimes end up with 3 or 4 lines coming through on a feed or on a CSV just that relate to one transaction. So if they, if Intuit were able to absolutely nail that, I think it would be a godsend. So it's something that's really, it's not been a major issue for me because I haven't had to deal with too many sort of PayPal-related clients, but for some, especially if you're getting, a couple of thousand transactions a month coming through for these small sort of, Amazon-related sales and the like, it can be a lot of work to tidy up.
Yeah, completely. So, Ash, you got any news your end?
I've got a little bit of news. Shall I just share my screen?
Perfect.
Oh, I need to click on the share screen. That would absolutely help, wouldn't it? So let me just click on share screen. I've got it now.
There we are.
Coming through?
Yeah, coming through. With a flicker.
With a flicker. I don't know why that is flickering.
Let's just remove it and start again. How about that?
No, it's not doing it. That's not helping at all. Okay, I can do it without. Let me just stop sharing, and I can just do it without the share screen. So there is a third-party app called Xavier, which is basically there to sort of link in with your accounting package to almost do like a bit of a bookkeeping review as to how tidy are your transactions? Are things quite correct? Have you got any duplicate customers, for example? Have you got any assets which you've not, people have purchased assets, maybe you've not sort of dealt with those. So there's different sort of ways of monitoring and checking the accuracy of your bookkeeping. Now that company Xavier, that app, has actually just been acquired by Receipt Bank. So Xavier is now part of Receipt Bank, and it's been part of their offerings. Now, at the moment, Xavier is primarily a Xero application, but I'm reading the article that was within Accounting Web, and I came down a little bit, just read again what was said. Bear with me, I've just lost where it's on there. The ambitions are to expand it beyond the UK and to support QuickBooks Online users as well. So that's their sort of forward-thinking goals there. So that's my first little bit of news. So back over to you, Aaron.
Yeah, it's just on that though. It's really interesting, isn't it, with Receipt Bank and Auto Entry and the other ones, because you've got QuickBooks developing their own solution in-house, and you've got Xero. They've acquired it. Was HubDoc, was it? Or one of the ones they acquired to do the similar sort of idea, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's kind of got to a point where Receipt Bank and Auto Entry they're definitely still relevant, because in our firm we definitely value them, but they're having to kind of relook at their model as to exactly what it is they can do, isn't it?
I think you're right, Aaron, because I don't think that they can just offer, receipt scanning, because, Intuit, QuickBooks have just brought that in. Well, it's been in there a little while, but now they're sort of building upon that. So just to have that facility alone isn't going to be enough. They're needing to sort of put something else in there to sort of give accountants and businesses what do I if I can do everything in QuickBooks, what exactly do I need you for? But definitely they've definitely got a place still, because if you're dealing with high volume transactions, and like we mentioned just before the call, if you've got a business and you just don't want them anywhere near that QuickBooks file, and you don't want them to have a login to QuickBooks, or you don't want them to have a login to Xero, at least by just giving them a login to whether it's auto entry or whether it's receipt bank, they can't go any further than that. All they can do is just get their mobile phone out or upload the documents, and that's it, and then you can take it from there.
Definitely. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what's kind of their next step, isn't it, and how they evolve. It's going to be definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
So for my news then, the next bit that I've got to bring in is all about a new feature coming to QuickBooks. So QuickBooks themselves, they came through with quite a few little features they're bringing into the summer. And we've gone through quite a few of them over the last couple of QuickBooks Labs. So we were talking about the CIS improvements, and we've had other improvements we've talked about before. The one that I want to bring to everyone's attention, though, which I think is going to be really useful, is this whole idea that they're going to be starting to introduce checks and checklists on a monthly basis. So if anyone's ever played around with the smart checking feature within QuickBooks, so if you think about it from the VAT point of view, there is the option that before you file a VAT return, you have an option there to actually file or do a smart check, should I say, where it goes through and it looks at the data, make sure that it's accurate, make sure there's no errors and them sort of things. So it's going to be taking that sort of concept, but it's going to apply it on a more granular basis and a more larger basis as to the whole of the month. And personally at our firm, we're quite excited by that idea. The idea that basically we can run it, we can go into at the end of each month, we can run a nice little report, a nice little check. And the idea then is it should spot any errors or anything that's coming through. And I did have a play around, or at least watch some videos of it from the US and how they've implemented it or how they're looking to implement it. And if they follow suit with that, the implementation there, which they tend to do, it could be a really exciting feature for us, because it's going to be something that's just going to mean that we can start trusting the data even more. And the more we can trust the data, the better it's going to be for everyone.
Yeah, that sounds really good. So is that smart check? It's almost like a little bit of what that Xavier is doing. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. But again, in-house, so encouraging people just to go through, make a few checks, make a few things. I mean, majority of the stuff there is available to us anyway. It's just that it's a call to action for people to go and make the checks and everything else. And then they're going to look on it as well in terms of how, I forget their terminology, but they're going to almost score it, gamify it, if you like, in terms of how well you're doing or how well you've got you're under control of your books, if you like. And I think that's a really clever twist in terms of trying to get people, or trying to encourage people to look at the data on a more regular basis.
Yeah, that smart check sounds pretty. Was the smart check actually in labs a little while ago? And I'm thinking almost about a year ago.
Yeah, it definitely came for a bit, didn't it? It was there for a little bit, and it's little things like this come and go, don't they? Because there was also the QuickBooks Assistant, whatever they were calling it, their little Siri and Google Assistant type thing as well, wasn't there? So yeah, you're right. It definitely was there. It was around the same time, and now it's gone again. So they must be prepping it ready to launch at some point.
Yeah, so I do remember actually turning it on. Actually, I think through QuickBooks Labs, and sort of it came up with a few little things that maybe I should take a look at. None of them actually helped me at the time, so hopefully they fixed that. They said, "Oh, you've got someone paying somebody's wages." Yes, he's in the right place. That's where it should be. So hopefully they'll iron out those little things. But it's like
useful, don't we, in terms of just
it's like all things once they're in. Over to me for my little bit of news.
Go for it, Gash. Go for it.
Okay, can I try and share my screen without it flickering like a good one? share screen. Let's give it another go.
That's better.
Oh, yeah, that's more like it. So we were talking a little bit about, receipt capture, which is a fairly new feature. Now, before, well, actually, it was only a few weeks ago when you were using that receipt capture and you wanted to actually email a document out, you pretty much could only have one, you were given an email address where you were going to send it to. Now, that meant that if you had more than one QuickBooks file, it was a little bit difficult. Now, they've changed it. So if I actually go into the receipts area, you can choose an email. So if I go to customize email, so this is for a test file that I have, you can, if it's available, you can choose the email address that you want. So I've got one here, so I'm just going to call it Ash. Ash Advanced. So that means that I can now email my receipts, my supplier bills to ashadvanced@qbodocs.com. So I can claim that email address if it's available. So it will just find out if it is. And that looks good. So I'll confirm that is exactly what I want. Now, depending on who has access to this file, I can now choose if I, as the administrator, I've immediately got access. If I've got 3 or 4 users, I can say each one of those has the ability of emailing those in so I can add them. If I need to add further users, I can do so here. What that will do, though, it will just take me into the add users area. So the benefit of this is that you can be using multiple QuickBooks files. So you've now got a dedicated email address. The one thing which is different to emailing documents from via auto entry, if you like, or receipt bank, is that if you're emailing those documents, you have to be a user of QuickBooks. So unlike some of the third-party apps where you might want to give that one of your suppliers, maybe you want to give one of those suppliers, well, just send your supplier and bills to this email address. That can't be done because they're not a registered user of that QuickBooks file. So that's the only sort of the downfall of that. But apart from that, it should save us quite a bit of time.
Yeah, it's interesting, that one. And I've just been thinking, because I was we've not played around with it as a firm, but it does mention just users, doesn't it? So it doesn't mention anything about the accounting user. So you know how you can have the difference between a normal user and accounting. So, I mean, it's something I'll have to check, but I assume you can't send it in via the accountant?
Well, funnily enough, I'm actually logged in as the accountant.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So that should be fine. So, so when I go into my managed senders, so I'm actually the accountant user here.
Perfect. Okay, so that's good. And you're not an additional user as well, are you?
No, if I check my users, I should find in my manage users that, I appear in 2 places because I set this up, but I appear in the accounting firms with my email address as well as standard users as well.
Okay, that's an interesting one. We'll have to keep an eye on and try that one, because that definitely was something when we first launched the receipt entry. It was something that didn't quite work out, did it? Originally, it didn't seem to be a sensible solution.
Yeah, but it should all work as we need it to now.
Good. That's what we want. We want progress. That's good news. Okay, fantastic. With that, then, that's the end of the news. Shall we move on to the next feature then? So the first feature that we've got for today is, it's me. It's Milage. So straight into that one then. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share screens just like we've just done. Now, the whole point of Milage, or the reason that Milage is going to be so important, is basically when it comes to, we get rid of that one. It's basically when it comes to thinking about and talking about making sure you claim your mileage in the first place. So mileage is one of those expenses within the world of accountancy, which is always quite tricky as an accountant to make sure that our clients are claiming for it, because mileage in its essence is very easy to forget about and not actually claim it and not actually put it through. So if you've got any solution out there that makes it easier for you as a business to be able to claim mileage, it's always going to be a really easy or a better solution. And one of the things that's important is thinking about what's in your hand. So here we have a mobile phone, and with a mobile phone, oh, it's lost it. Let me just bring that one back up. So with a mobile phone itself, hoping it's going to come back in. With a mobile phone itself, you get the option in the QuickBooks app to actually show. I don't think it's going to. There we are. And it's going to give you an option to actually claim mileage directly in the QuickBooks app. So to show you how that's done, I'm just going to quickly get into my QuickBooks app. And it's just going to ask me to do a little Face ID. And within here, if I jump into my hamburger button, you'll notice that I've got some options in there. And in the bottom right-hand corner, I have the option for mileage. Let's click on there. Now, the mileage option within QuickBooks is all about making it really easy for yourself. So instead of having to literally try and remember the mileage or anything else, all I have to do is go into this area, and you'll notice at the very top, there's an option there for auto tracking. Now, auto tracking, if I click on the Learn More option, gives you the option to basically let the phone automatically track where you're going, or if you're going from A to B, and give you the option to claim that as mileage. Now, the way that it works is, as it was saying on there, is all about GPS tracking. So the idea is, if I'm going to go from here to maybe a client's house or wherever it's going to be, I literally jump in the car. I don't need to touch anything on my phone. I don't need to change anything within QuickBooks itself. I literally get in the car, drive from A to B. When I'm driving from A to B, at that point, it's going to register that as a potential business mileage. And I'll show you later, you get the option at that point to then say that was mileage or that wasn't mileage in terms of business or personal. So it's relating particularly directly on the fact that your phone's using GPS to be able to do recording of those mileage options. Now, the clever thing about that is that idea where you're not having to sit there and mark it as you're starting a trip and then mark that you've stopped a trip. It's going to record all the trips that you make, and then it's up to you at some point to go through and have a look at that. Now, to show you that in action, I am going to jump actually to the self-employed app. Because in there, I do have data in there that we can look at, but it looks exactly the same as it does from the normal QuickBooks app. But in here, you'll notice that I've actually got some trips that have already been allocated or recorded for me. Now, this is what it will look like at the end of a week when you go through and you see the transactions that have already gone through QuickBooks Self-Employed or QuickBooks mobile app. And all you have to do is you go through each of these transactions and you literally swipe left for personal or swipe right for business. Now, the whole swiping left and right, I'm not sure where they got that idea from. I'm sure it will catch on at some point. But the idea is if you swipe to say personal, then it will just get rid of that transaction for you and it won't record it. But if you swipe right for business, you get to say what the trip was for. So maybe it was meeting with clients, and it will record that transaction for you. You even have the option, if I just go back to the main app now, you even have the option to record rules as well. So you can set it that every time you move from your office to a particular client or whatever it's going to be, you can set it so that it'll automatically record that transaction as a business transaction. Now, it also appears in the QuickBooks app as well. Oh, we just sign back in again. In the main QuickBooks browser. So if I just sign in and I jump into mileage, you will notice in the mileage options, might not like the fact that I've just signed back in. Let's try again. You'll notice in the mileage options when it does come back,
I was just put a bit of humour in, Aaron. I was just thinking, maybe I've never been on a dating website, but don't you actually swipe left or right if you like someone or something? I just wondered, perhaps one of the
They've
one of the software engineers might have got this idea of swiping left or right, whether they liked the travel or not.
take a cue from some particular famous app out there from somewhere. So yeah. Definitely. Hopefully it'll catch on one day, the swiping. So now we should be back into it. Brilliant. So now at this point then, just quickly get out that one and over to mileage. You'll notice that in this area, you'll see that this is the information from the browser. Now, what's happening here is it's got that information coming through for me. So as you can see, I've got at the very top, I've got information about what mileage I'd had in a particular quarter. It's telling me how much mileage I've been able to claim, what percentages. So it's giving me quite a nice little bit of information. And it does give you the option in the top right-hand corner to add and copy trips if you need to, and maybe add a brand new trip. You can also have multiple vehicles. So if you have got different vehicles, you can make sure that they're being utilized properly. And if you do need to add a brand new transaction, then the add trip button's just here. And from here, you can then put in a date, you can put in distance, you can put in a starting point, end point, and you can mark it as business. So that's if you want to put a manual trip in there. On the mobile app as well, you get the option to put a manual trip in. But once you've got all the information in place, one thing that you'll then need to do is record it as an expense or as a journal, depending on which way around you want to do it. Now, the way I would suggest to do it is as an expense. I think you get more options there, but you could put this as a journal as well. So basically what I need to do first of all is find out how many miles I have to claim. Now I can press the download button up here, or I can tick on different items and I can go through and I can then download those particular items, or I can mark them all as business if I need to. Once I know how many miles I've got, so I'd use the download button to do that. That will then be my proof of mileage, and then I need to go and record that expenditure. So I'm going to go use the new button at the top. I'm going to go to suppliers, and from the expenses area, I'm just going to record the last mileage that I did. And I'm going to use this one because then from here, I can more and copy. I would then make sure my date's correct. I'm going to use today's date to make it nice and straightforward. From here, I've just called it personal as a payee, but you could call that whatever works for you. And I'm saying it's coming from my director's loan account or drawings account as a payment account. I'm then going to say mileage is my category. In here, I would say how many miles I've already done. So let's say that it worked out at 15,000, and I'll do it by 45p. I then have already created a VAT category called mileage in inclusive. And what that does then is it records and it comes back to my 3p per mile for me. But the reason I like doing it as an expense is I'll also got the opportunity to make it billable. So if I need to, I can tick this box and I can put it against a customer. And then if I'm recharging my mileage out to a particular customer, it means I can do that nice and easily. At the very bottom, I have the option to put an attachment in. So I would browse. I'd go to my downloads and I'll bring in that QuickBooks mileage I've just brought in. And that way, it's a really quick and easy way and a simple way of making sure you're recording your mileage within QuickBooks.
Nice, Aaron. Yeah, it's a nice feature. Actually, I've just spotted a couple of questions come through on mileage. So while we're sort of
go for it.
While you're covering that, so I can see on one just there, Leanne had asked us, can you delete the trips that have been designated as personal in mileage on the computer? Not sure why they will still stay there. I mean, I don't think they go anywhere. What's your sort of take on that one?
Yeah, so they don't give you an extra option to delete as such, unfortunately. It does seem to be sat there under the personal section. Once you have reviewed them, I'm just having a quick look. As soon as you reviewed them, you don't get the option to actually delete them at all. So it is something that I would say is something that we probably want to look at trying to get some feedback over to QuickBooks, because I've come across that one before and never put the feedback in before. So yeah, it is something that we should really look at it. But I suppose the reason it's not been deleted at this moment is because that when you do go to say it's personal or it's business or whichever way around you're doing it, you then get the opportunity to go back to it and restate it. So if you've accidentally put it to personal, accidentally put it to reviewed to business, then you'll have the option to bring that back. So I suppose that's why it's there. But no, Leanne's spot on there. We should really have the option, if we can, of just deleting it, and it's kind of stops there then, doesn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it'd be nice, possibly if it was, let's say, safeguarded within a current financial year. So you wouldn't be able to actually change it this year, but as soon as you go, or as soon as you've closed the books or something, it would allow you to, actually, I don't want any of those anymore, so just get rid of them. And a little message might pop up, are you sure? Something like that.
Yeah,
that might be good. Okay, so on to my little sort of bookkeeping tip of the day, if you like. And I'm still showing my screen. Perfect. So the one reason why I brought up this next tip, and it's dealing with, if you might buy an asset, computer equipment, a van on hire purchase, and how you might account for those transactions. And I've seen this question come quite a few times on different bookkeeping forums and QuickBooks forums. So I thought, well, let's just have a look at, how I would deal with it. It's not necessarily how everyone deals with it, but this would be my sort of scenario. The first thing I'm going to do is just go into my chart of accounts to show you what categories that I've actually got set up. If I'm buying something on hire purchase and it's for an asset, then what I will need to have in place for the asset is going to be a fixed asset category. So if I just scroll down a little bit without me searching for it, because I know it should be pretty much here, I've got a motor vehicles cost, I've got a tangible asset, I've got a fixed asset category for that. What I've also got, in fact, I'll just search for them, is I have a loan set up. So I've got a current liability with a detailed type loan payable. So I've got a loan account set up for the hire purchase loan. I've also got interest payable. So we should be, accounting for interest on that loan, unless you happen to get a really good deal and it's going to be interest free, but I've got an interest payable on there as well. And I might have depreciation for the balance sheet and for the profit and loss setup in there as well. If I take a look at, so I'm just going to go into create a bill, and it should pretty much be one of the last bills that I've done, so I can take a look at it. And my QuickBooks seems to go very slow when I'm connected.
Every time you do live.
On this live show, I think there's so many things going on in the background. It's just everything wants to grind to a halt. Now, if I look at my recent transactions, and there we have a bill in there for Vans R Us. So quite often, if you buy a commercial vehicle on hire purchase and you're VAT registered, well, they're going to want you to pay the VAT up front, quite often for the entire cost of the vehicle. And they might also ask you to pay perhaps 10% of that vehicle cost as well. So what I've got is I've got a supplier bill on there. And so the total purchase cost, excluding VAT, is £30,000 with the total amount of VAT. Now, if I scroll down, so VAT on 30,000 is £6,000, and that's appearing in my VAT box. Now, I'm also going to pay 3,000, sort of 10%, of the net value of that. So the loan balance, in fact, is 90%, which is 27,000. So what I've got here is I've got those two categories. I've got the fixed asset category for the cost of the vehicle, and I've got the category for the loan shown as a negative. So taking away, I've got basically £3,000 worth of cost to pay, £6,000 £9,000 total. So that's how I'm going to account for my initial deposit, and then my VAT. That's what I need to pay that supplier, immediately. Now, moving forward, I'm going to have to pay a monthly HP loan repayment. Now, when we pay those monthly HP loan repayments, and if I just take a look in my recent transactions, I've got a few expenses in here. Quite often when you get the loan agreement that comes through, I'll say, well, actually, you're going to pay 48 monthly payments of 600, 500, whatever it is, a month. Now, when you're preparing the accounts, quite often when you do get to the year end, you will look back at what the interest is. You might do a sum of digits calculation, and interest is often sort of loaded up heavy at the front. So we can't really account for that without changing transactions every month. But what you might want to do is just to smooth your interest over the case of the year. So roughly you might think, well, actually, I might have £600 worth of interest each year. So what I'm going to do, or you might know what you expect your net monthly repayment to be, is that, well, I'm going to set up a monthly transaction which is going to look at sort of paying off my loan, £562.50. Now, whatever the difference is, I'm going to put to interest payable. Now, these couple of transactions I've put in, I have put them in manually. But moving forward, you get a bank feed set up and you have the transactions coming through, then you may as well create a rule for that, because these are the sorts of things which never change. So once you start paying off your loans, it's usually the same amount every single month, but usually 47 months out of 48. So within my banking area, if I go into banking, just give a sec for it to wake up, and then I'll go into my rules. And if I just come to the bottom of this page, because that's the last rule that I have set up. So I've got a rule there for that, my monthly van payments. So this bank rule, which I've just named it with the van payment ABC, and it's just for the money that goes out, and the bank text, which usually is going to be the same every single month, might have your agreement number or something similar. So this is going to create an expense every month, and I'm splitting the transaction by an amount. So when you split a transaction through a rule, you can choose to split through a percentage or through a value. But what I'm indicating here is that the first £562.50, I always want that to allocate against my loan. That's pretty much what I'm expecting to pay off every single month. Now, below that, my second split is whatever the difference is, I basically want to go to interest payable. And I can have different VAT codes. I've got no percent, no VAT against the loan payment, and I've just marked the interest payment marked that as an exempt code. And the payee is not mandatory, and that's step there. Now, if I just close that down, so if I'll just open up the trial balance. So what we'll find, if I look at my van, loan for my van, which will appear on my balance sheet, is now showing at the sort of 25,000 odd. Change that to all dates. So there's my transaction, which is split. So it's over £600 a month, which is coming through, but I'm only allocating £562.50 to offset the loan balance. And then we can tidy that final balance up at the end of the year if I need to adjust the interest up or down against that. And my profit and loss at the moment has got a nice even, if I search for my profit and loss, I'll have a nice consistent, if I'll run this from 5 today. And look at it by month. I'll have a nice consistent amount appearing in my interest payable. And I do like a bit of consistency. And in addition to that, of course, when if you'd had purchased that asset, then you could use an app like NetTracker and track that asset and put the depreciation through automatically. So that's my little bit of bookkeeping tips on that for today.
Yeah, I love that. And I think as well, because you keep mentioning the fact that at the end of the year we can clean it up, but it's so much easier to clean it up when there's already kind of some of the transactions there, isn't it? When you're just having to make an adjustment as opposed to having to start from scratch, it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, because if you've got 2/3 of the story there already. So instead of you as the accountant trying to sort of trawl back, so, oh, I wonder if that was a van that was purchased or what did they do? You've got it there. And actually, another little tip here for bookkeepers is that if I went back to that bill, is that don't forget with these, especially with HP agreements, if you can put the bill on the system and then, within your attachment, so you might scan the bill anyway through your receipt capture or similar and got the bill on there. But if you can put the HP loan agreement in that attachment, it will just save, because these are the questions that your accountant is going to come back with, that will say, okay, I can see you bought a van and it looks to me like you are paying that off. How long have you got to pay that off for? How many years? What's the interest? So save yourself all of those questions and just provide your accountant with all the information there so that they can get the job done quicker for you, because that's what it's all about. Just save those emails.
Yeah, couldn't agree anymore with that one. Couldn't agree anymore. And I love the way that you're showing here how to do that no VAT. Or in this case, we've got a little bit of a payment, but it's a similar sort of idea, isn't it, for no VAT? So if you've got any transaction that needs a VAT only invoice, then this is a really clever way of doing it, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So whether it's like we're doing the courses, whether it's insurance claims and you just want the VAT, whether you're purchasing goods from abroad because you're having to buy stuff from the US or Australia and you only pay the VAT and the duty, that's basically how you just do it. You're just splitting transactions over lines, one with VAT and one without.
Definitely, because I've seen too many people try to change that VAT box in the bottom right hand corner, which will work, but it recalculates every time you go back into the transaction. So try your best not to amend it down in that bottom right hand corner.
Yeah, it will do, and it also makes your VAT returns look a bit odd.
I've seen that many times. Definitely. I know that's really useful. Cheers for that, Ash. And I suppose also with that way of doing it and kind of looking at, like you said, you've got NetTracker as well to kind of help you with the depreciation and everything else. Just going to make it nice and clean, isn't it? So no, that's a really, really good tip there. Thanks, Ash.
All right, no problem. Okay, so have we got some questions, Aaron?
We certainly have. So remember, this is your time to shine. So if there's any questions you've got regarding QuickBooks, regarding anything to do with you might have regarding any kind of accounting solutions as well, we're more than happy to have a look at them. So let's look at the questions we've had so far. So we've had a few kind of shout outs as well. So Joe over at Closet Greets, he's here live. So nice to see you, Joe. Nice for you to join in. We've already mentioned Leanne, but she's in as well. So hi to Leanne. But Leanne did ask a further question as well, which actually is something that's worthwhile just bringing up quickly. So Leanne's talking about here about how her criticism, should I say, of the app is about the fact that it's bringing in quite a lot of those mileage transactions. Now, I completely understand your point here and kind of understanding the fact that it's there, but do remember you've got the rules situation. That's how I've dealt with it myself. So if I know that I'm going to be going on a regular basis to and from a certain area, then I do like to just bring the rules into play. It does make my life easier in terms of making sure that they've been accounted for.
That's that's quite nice. But is that a rule within the mileage feature itself, Aaron?
Yeah. So within the mileage feature themselves, you can set it so that if you keep going from one place to another, then it automatically goes through as a business transaction for you, just like it does in the banking section. If you kind of look at it as parallel to that. So,
all right. Have we got time for you to give us a quick demo on that?
certainly. Okay,
well,
so
I think I'm just being rather selfish because I wouldn't want to see it myself.
All right. To be fair, in fairness, I should have really have shown it first of all. So let's have a quick play around with the whole bringing up the screen. Okay, then. So hopefully you should be able to see my screen in front of you. And on my screen, you can see I'm in the Milage app. Now, you can do this in the browser experience as well, but I do find it easier because, primarily you're using the Milage directly from here. But bottom right-hand corner, there's that option to create. And as I mentioned, when you can create a brand new trip directly from here. So just so you have seen that, you get this nice little picture here where you can then put your start dates and everything to go from there. But also from the create button is create rule. And if I press create rule, I basically get to say what to do with a trip if it goes between these 2 points. So if I say starting point was my current location, and I'm saying that's my office, and my ending point was Pride Park, home to the mighty Rams, then if I press save, I then get to dictate what happens every time I make that trip. So if I was going to make that trip, I can say it's always a business expense. I can say I'm meeting my client. And I can also look at applying rules to past trips. So if you are having a stage where you've got loads of trips being recorded, then maybe consider this rule feature here, where you can apply rules to past trips, press save, and it will go through all the rules that you've got in your list, and it will then apply them automatically to whatever you've set them as.
That's really handy. So if you're doing a lot of school trips, the school run, for example, so with those rules set up for your mileage, will that auto apply me, and also a bit like the bank, sort of get rid of them from your review screen automatically as well?
Yeah, exactly right. And that's what it's all about. It's about just trying to clean up that review screen, because Leanne got it absolutely spot on. It is one of those where it's kind of the poison chalice, if you like. We want to make mileage really, really simple for us. So we want to make it so that we can get it as straightforward as we possibly can. But at the same time, if you are just having it constantly running around, you're just going to get mileage after mileage after mileage after mileage. But like you said, if you just put it to the school trip and automatically put that to personal, at least then it's starting to feed them out and get them out of the way.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. Yeah. So thanks, Leanne, for that question. So that's something I'll think about actually in the future.
Brilliant. Okay, next question up was Kirsty, and Kirsty asks, Can I have QuickBooks look after my own sole trader figures and the ones for mine and my husband's business? I'm looking for something with everything under one roof to make it easier. Do you know what? This is a question that for some reason has been popping up more than often in this last couple of weeks. And I don't know what it is that's bringing it up, but I've had quite a few queries of this. And it's not just about using it for multiple businesses, but it's also people looking for personal use as well.
So my stance on this is no, don't do it. Just don't do it, because you create a rod for your own back. That's my own personal stance on this. So yeah, there's lots of little tips, and I think we had something similar the other week, Aaron. You can use locations or classes to split between your different businesses. But I remember a lady in America, one of the sort of trainers there, and it says sometimes one of her comments was, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. And this is probably what I'm thinking of on here, is that yes, you might save yourself a £5 a month on a subscription, but the grief that you may get on top of that is not worth it.
No, I see. I completely see what you're saying there, and you're right. You can use classes. You can use locations. If you really want to, you can use different categories. There are ways in which you can do it, but as Ash is saying, it is something that does tend to cause you more issues than it's worth. When it comes to that personal side of things, though, because I know for some people it's because they're utilizing one bank account, both business and personal.
Yeah.
I mean, my advice to that one is, if possible, do get yourself a business bank account. It just makes your life easier, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a business account if you just a sole trader or whatever it's going to be. But having that separation, having that way in which you've got, this is my business account and this is my personal account, just makes your life so much easier in terms of not just your accounting and bookkeeping, but also your discipline and kind of letting your business grow and things like that. So it is something definitely to consider in terms of trying to split them as much as possible.
Yeah. I mean, on that sort of topic, so as I'm sort of saying, on one hand, don't do these sort of things. My wife is a good example here. So my wife's got a very simple sort of type of business, service-based, sort of a bit similar to us, trainers, but in a different sort of field. And now she only has, like one invoice a month to raise. So pretty much all done through QuickBooks. But again, also only has a personal bank account, and that's linked through QuickBooks. But what I've also done for my wife is, in fact, so I've set up loads of bank rules. So, for example, when she goes shopping, Tesco's or Sainsbury's, it's going to code it to Tesco's or Sainsbury's, but I've also created some accounts in the chart of accounts. So I wouldn't normally do this, but it's just a very small business for my wife, and that's basically expenses go to drawings, and with little subcategories: food, clothing, kids, and everything. But I've also got them spun. I've got two classes set up: business and personal. So when we run a profit and loss report, so I'm only interested in the P&L by the business, so which I help to do the tax return for. Then I'll just run the P&L by that class, business, and there'll only be like 6 categories. When I run the P&L by personal, then there'll be 20 categories, holidays and all the things that are bought for the kids. So I am, in that instance, using it for personal and business nature. What I wouldn't recommend that for everybody, but I definitely wouldn't mix 2 businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a really interesting point you've raised there, because I've been struggling to kind of understand the concept as to why people were doing it that way. But you're right, it's for that whole personal, budgeting, isn't it? And just seeing it as a kind of way in which they're already paying for some software, so why not get the benefit of not only seeing how their business is doing on a budgeting point of view, but also from a personal point of view as well. So it's one of those things where that actually could work quite well, couldn't it? So that's quite an interesting way of looking at it, really.
Yeah, it is. It is handy for personal budgeting, because quite often, if you are, especially, the amount of hoops sometimes you have to go through to get a mortgage these days, and they want to look back at, how much you're expecting to spend on 20 or 30 different categories. If you have sort of been monitoring that through your bank statements and your credit cards for 12 months, that's easier to filter out. And in fact, when I first started sort of bookkeeping, my sort of self-employed bookkeeping, if you like. So when I went self-employed about 10, 12 years ago, one of my first clients, in fact, was quite a sort of wealthy businessman, and he had multiple businesses. But one of my jobs was actually just to go through all of his personal bank accounts, because he wanted me to monitor his own personal spend. And I used to use QuickBooks for that. So I would literally put through, what he'd spent on his big bank, his credit cards, and also created budgets so he could see, this is how much I'm expecting you to spend on, hotels and restaurants and traveling around the world. This is what you did last year. This might be what you do next year.
Yeah, and I think especially in times like this where people are so worried about, and rightly so, in terms of kind of monthly spend and what they're going to, how much money's coming in because of COVID and everything else. I suppose there is some real benefit to that, isn't there? It's just getting your own personal circumstance, your own personal accounts in order. So definitely that. I don't know if, for the majority of people, I don't know if using the same software in classes and locations is quite right for them. But I would probably consider, for people who are looking to do it on a personal basis, I think that's where QuickBooks Self-Employed could be a really good shout for them, because it is so much more of a money in, money out, money in, money out, money in, money out, which is what, personally is what it's interested in, isn't it? And it's got a lot more of a way of being able to kind of categorize things in a more simplistic way, I suppose. So, if you are considering for your own personal use, maybe having a QuickBooks Self-Employed and the QuickBooks app might be a worthwhile one. And that means you also get to have both of those on your phone at the same time, and you can distinguish between the two quite easily.
Yeah, but I was just thinking about QuickBooks Self-Employed. Would you be able to categorize those personal types of expenses?
Yeah, because you could put them as mileage, travel, whatever, as they are in business expenditure ideas.
Oh, right. So you would treat them as a business cost.
Yeah.
Even though it's for personal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And you'll just say it's going to this and going to that and going to this. Yeah. So, you're not using it for its intended purpose as such, but most of the time that's what we're here to do, isn't it? Find ways to push QuickBooks to its limits. So.
Yeah. There's always sort of ways of experimenting, definitely.
Perfect. We got a final question in from Leanne. So Leanne's going to brought up a follow-up question to the rules. I did set the rules bit up, which was lovely, but if I go to the new charity shops, etc., I still have to plow through every journey. Wonder if I should just switch to my phone off auto when personal. And that's a really good point there. So when I turned on the auto recording feature, you do have the option to go in there and turn it off again if it's frustrating and doing that. My only negative or downside to that is that's the sort of thing that people would then forget to turn back on again. So it's difficult, isn't it? It's one of those swings and roundabouts as to what's going to be the best solution. One thing I would say in your particular circumstance there, Leanne, is because you're doing so many little trips, then I know it's a pain to kind of having to go through it. But the worst scenario or the worst situation you could have is you don't have that facility and you forget to include that one trip to the charity, which I know is not going to be like make or break. But at the end of the day, we want to try and claim every penny we're owed when it comes to mileage. So, take that as a bit. But it is something that I'm pretty sure that there's definitely some other features, should I say, that's coming to the mileage section soon. There's only so much I'm allowed to say on that one, but there is definitely more features coming. So I would definitely kind of watch this space, if you like, in terms of it. Now, I'm not 100% sure it's quite what you're after in terms of making your life easier in that respect, but they're constantly updating it. So maybe that's the sort of thing that we can kind of push forward, and we can try and get as many people as we can, or at least try and get as many people to make adjustments as we can.
Yeah, I guess on the flip side, if at this moment in time, if the mileage isn't working exactly for you, I mean, don't always have a look at maybe go onto apps.com, have a look at some of the mileage apps that are on there, because in that way you do have the ability of not having anything coming through to QuickBooks, which you could possibly just review, every quarter or even every year. So at the moment, I know I've just carried on using it because I started using it, years before the mileage feature came into QuickBooks. So I'm using an app called TripLog, which I started using when Aaron and I started doing app reviews in 2018. And that sort of just kicks in with the Bluetooth on my car when I start driving. So if I'm on a train, it won't kick in. If I go on a plane, it doesn't kick in. So just through the Bluetooth connected to my car. And then every week, actually, I receive an email that tells me what trips I've done. which I can go in and review. And if I really wanted to, but I don't at the moment, I could set it to journal some values through. So have a look, and sometimes sort of have a look outside the box if you like. And then when you're happy that the QuickBooks Milage app is really what you want, then you can always scrap the other apps, because they're not very expensive. A lot of the Milage apps, some are completely free, and some I think I pay about £20 a year for mine. So yeah, it's not too much.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well. You're saying because it's one of those things of what's best for it. You're using journal entries to get your mileage in there. Is there any reason why, or you would say for particular people where that's a benefit to as opposed to expenses? What's your experience on it?
On the journal entry, well, as for me, I just and I suppose I could claim the VAT. I suppose I've just out of habit basically. I don't think there's a lot in it. they both do the same thing. I suppose with my journal entry, I put it directly to my director's loan in the balance sheet in the liability, so it goes straight across. So that's the benefit there. Whereas if you create the expense, you've got to use that bank category first.
Yeah, I suppose you get less. You tend to have less journal entries per client, don't you? So I suppose it's easier to find a journal entry, to copy it and kind of do it again, isn't it? So I suppose there's that to it as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we've got one more question in. Well, I say question, more of a statement. We've got the legendary Jack from Intuit. So if you're a part of any of the QuickBooks Facebook groups at all, then you'll know Jack, because he pops up in all of them. And he says he's loving the t-shirt. So I'm glad someone spotted it. That's a nice little Easter egg we've been putting out there. So fantastic. Cheers for that, Jack. Appreciate that comment. Okay, then with that, I think we're coming towards the end, aren't we, Ash?
I believe so. So our next session is 2 weeks' time. So sticking with the theme, it's going to be 2 weeks today, which is the 21st of July, same time at 4 o'clock. We haven't got a full agenda yet. We've got a couple of people that are interested in coming on. We've got some possible guests for the future, not booked in for that date. But some app providers. I've got Rowan from Apps Advisory who's going to come on with us at some stage. So we'll have a good think about some other sort of topics, other sort of tips that we can sort of give and sort of demonstrate. But anything that you would like us to try and demonstrate on a future episode, then please drop those questions. And don't forget, if you're not already following us, then give us a like or a follow on the QuickBooks Labs Facebook page, and you'll be kept up to date with our latest episodes.
Brilliant. So bye for me.
And it's a goodbye from me.
Cheers all. Bye now.
Bye.